hard for me to say who my father is now. For much of my life, I held on to the image that I had of him before he became radicalized. He was a very loving father. He was a very funny man. He always wanted to make us laugh. It was very clear that he loved his family. And I'd say maybe about 10 years ago, I started to think that perhaps I didn't really know my father that well at all. The night of the assassination, she was watching television, and her show was interrupted by breaking news, and it said that Rabbi Meir Kahane had been shot, and so had his assailant, and neither were expected to live. And they cut to footage of my father laying in a pool of blood, being put into an ambulance. In a single night, she went from being a Muslim housewife, perfectly content to raise 3 children, to a single mother of 3 kids with no job and an infamous husband. We were ostracized from the community that we lived in. We had to leave the school that we went to. They did not want us to come back. When I think about all of the things that she had to deal with, I realize how lucky I am that I had such a strong mother in my life. When my father went to prison, we were quite poor. We moved around a lot. I moved 20 times by the time I was 19 years old. So we lived a very unstable life. I was always the new kid in school. I was quiet, and I got bullied a lot. And that was probably the hardest experience that I ever had in my life, but it ended up teaching me one of the most valuable lessons, and that was about empathy. I'd become so familiar with what it was like to be judged for things that I had no control over. My name, my ethnicity, things that bullies would often torment me for. It's been about 20 plus years since I've seen my father. I spent years visiting him in prison, getting weekly phone calls from him. After his conviction during the World Trade Center trial in 1993, much of the evidence of his connection to this plot to bomb a dozen landmarks in New York City had been revealed. And for the first few years that he was in prison, he claimed his innocence. And so once all of this evidence came out, my mother divorced my father and we ended communication with him.